My word of the month for May when it comes to the Denver metro housing market is balance. But it doesn't look like it and it doesn't feel like it, but that's really what it's shaking out to be. And I'm going to show you why. The 7-county Denver metro, we're back up to a little over 700 for the average, 709. And our median's right at 600. But you saw we had this dip, and that's what I talked about last month in April, is that our March numbers actually dipped down a bit. If you just pull the entire Denver Metro MLS as a whole, it doesn't look like that. It looks like we had this nice normal spring market. Actually, that's pulling in like Boulder and Weld and all these other counties that are not indicative of the 7-county Denver metro housing. That's why the data set matters. It's a little bit of a pickup for the April activity that closed out. In most cases, our pendings were actually down a little bit and our inventory was up, which is why we're going to shake around balance this whole time. And I'm going to show you some really cool visuals to represent that. Prices went up. That's nice. It makes everybody feel good. New listings, more new listings, a little over 6,700 new listings for the month. That doesn't look crazy high compared to the rest of our really spiky graph here over 5 years. Active listings. This is one of the big things that's going to lead towards balance that a lot of people aren't prepared for. This shift is happening like right now. It is May 2nd. I'm filming this at 11 a.m. on a Friday, and I wanted to get it out early this month because the shift is going to happen right now in the next 2 to 4 weeks, and a lot of sellers are not prepared for it. We had over 11,000 available residential properties to buy in the 7-county Denver metro area for the month of April. But our pendings were down to just under 4,400. They actually went down just a touch versus the month before. We've been climb. That's not unusual. Most shoppers are out in March and April. Everybody thinks it's June and they're wrong. They're wrong. Prices usually top out in June from the May shoppers that are going back and comparing to the prices of houses that closed recently in April. That's because of how data works, how long the closing time takes. But when a buyer is looking at a house and they say, oh, this house is listed for $500,000, they ask their realtor, is that a good price for this house? We've seen this, and this. It feels like a good price. Can you give me some comps or sold comparables that help justify this price? The best data the realtor or appraisers or anybody else has to look at is houses that closed in the last 30, 60, 90 days, right? March and April for the houses that get under contract in May that close in June, which is why those June prices will typically top out, but the buyer activity really kind of tops out in the March and April timeframe. The prices carry over to May. June is when sellers are like, oh, that's when the prices are high. That's when I list. And I'm like, guys, you missed the window. Every single year, I have to tell people that. So now is when that shift is happening. If you were wanting to sell your house and get that peak price point, now is your window. And if your house is not ready, you got to be prepared to chase the market down over the next few months. And I'm going to show you why I think it's really going to level off and there's going to be a lot of adjustment later half of this year, unless there's a major shift in the rates. So pendings are down, right? Closed listings are up because those are all the pendings from the month before. And let's just look. So April closings shook out at 39, 34. April pendings was around 4,400. That's about 1,100 fall in contracts. We usually run in the 20 to 25% fallout rate or back on market rate. We've been running close to the 25 to 30 on and off for a while now. It's happening a lot more. And I think sellers have unrealistic expectations that my house doesn't have to be great or things don't have to be right. And you get to inspection and buyers not only see that, but then they do the double take and there's more choices that they didn't really have before. Let's go ahead and talk about inventory. This is really what matters. There have been more active listings in the 7-county Denver metro market, over 11,000. That is the highest available inventory since 2012. And I've been talking about this in a lot of my videos, okay? Since November of 2012, that was the last time we had over 11,000 active residential properties listed for sale on a given calendar month. And I mentioned the last couple of months, this is the most spring inventory we have had since 2012. Yes, we had more inventory in certain months of the year, but it was the most we had in the spring. That's pretty normal for us to top out later in the summer. We're not there yet. So it's very, very possible that we get to 12 or 13,000 available residential properties for sale in a given calendar month, which is going to feel like 2012. We don't have the seasonal activity that we have right now. And if there's still market volatility or if the rates are still going all over the place, it's causing a lot of these buyers to be on the fence. I think it's going to cause a major balance in seller expectations. We are going to be a balanced market, probably even towards a buyer's market, which we haven't had in over 12 years. I don't think sellers are prepared for that. Let's go ahead and check months of supply. 3.2 months of supply. So that means if no more buyers and no more sellers came into the market as of today, it would take a little over 3 months for all of those buyers to buy up all of those available homes for sale. This is the best statistic that I like to talk about for explaining the balance of the current demand and supply situation. We're at over 3 months of supply in the spring. Last spring was slow and we didn't even have it then. Last April was 2 months. We're 50% higher than last April, which felt slow. But it felt slow because look at the last decade, okay? So we are back to a 2012 market. And I've had to explain that to people. And unfortunately, to my sellers that bought down here, right, in 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, when things were flying off the shelf, like it's not going to be that. It's a much more balanced market. The other thing that I wanted to talk about. So I usually look on my data points on a monthly basis. I have it set to monthly because that shows the seasonality I'm always talking about. We go up in the spring, we come down in the fall. We go up in the spring, we come down in the fall. Historically, we typically peak in May or June. Like I was just talking about that seasonal cycle or the spring buying cycle. But this is a really cool thing to look at. I don't usually do rolling months for data points, but here's why it's going to matter. So when we're looking at 2012, because we're back to a 2012 market as far as the buyer and seller balance. So you can see we go up in the spring, we come down in the fall, but it only goes down part of the way, right? We go up in the spring, we come down a little bit in the fall. We go up a decent amount in the spring, we come down a little bit in the fall. But it's generally a pretty smooth line up. Now, ignoring 2020, 2021, it was just nuts, right? Those are anomalies. They're not good for pattern recognition. But look at this. We're going up in the spring, but we're coming down almost all that way in the fall. Going up in the spring, coming down almost all the way back to the bottom. So our annual appreciation has really tapped out and it's very volatile from month to month. When we take that, and I'm going to change it to a rolling 12 months. This is not a data point that I usually use, but I want you to see it for this reason. Slow annual steady appreciation. Okay. This is the buying a home is a safe investment visualization. Slow, continual appreciation. Then you had this major increase, very steep, rapid appreciation. But now we've really flattened off. And the median shows the incremental appreciation that we've had over the last, I would say, 2 to 3 years. It's really been very minor, almost flat with some incremental increases. And we're really just back to those 22 numbers, 585 and 585. Now, this is for the 7-county metro as a whole. This is not the case for every neighborhood, every city, every property type. So what I've done here, the blue is still the 7-county metro as a whole. This is green is single family residence, and then the red is the multifamily. So now you can see that these attached properties that I've been talking about, they're actually lower and back down to, well, middle of 22, right? But there's been this stagnation in the appreciation. And it's been relatively flat. The single families are still doing pretty well, but they're just now coming back to 2022. So a lot of these sellers that life has changed, I need to move. I bought my house 2, 3 years ago. You're going to be coming out of pocket. There has not been the appreciation there to pay for those housing expenses as there would have been had you owned it for 3 years in a more steady, consistent, stable growth period. Welcome to the housing market. Just like any other market, it is a risk, but it was so safe and steady for so long that now, unfortunately, I'm having to have those conversations with a lot of sellers. I've seen a lot of properties that are priced too high. The justification from the seller's agent when I call and say, hey, my buyer likes the property, but it's not appropriately priced for the market. It probably won't appraise for that. And their response is, well, they just bought it in 2022 and they can't lose money on it. Well, I get that. But if they have to sell, they're going to have to lose money on it. Welcome to the housing market. Buying is not free. Selling is not free. There are costs associated with that process. Given that the whole theme of this is balance, a lot of this comes back to If you are going to need to sell in 2, 3, 4 years, you should seriously consider the renting versus the buying scenario and what the risk is with that. Because there is not a guarantee that there will be enough appreciation in the next few years with our inventory being the highest it's been. See, there's a 12-month rolling inventory numbers. With the inventory being the highest it's been in over 12 years, there probably won't be enough price appreciation to cover those costs. So renting is not always a bad thing. Renting is paying for options, paying for flexibility, and paying for less responsibility. Not a bad thing. It is not flushing money down the toilet for every single person. For a lot of people, it is the better investment of their monthly housing expenses. So I'm going to go ahead and go back into my normal data sets. So days in the MLS, if you are selling your home, you need to expect it to be on the market. Average is 5 weeks. The median is 2 weeks, at least for April. I've also said we're hitting that seasonal shift. May activity typically is less, especially towards the end of the month, than March and April. So this will probably turn up. See, April was the bottom. That is the case historically, seasonally. That's when the activity turns around. Expect your house to take a little bit longer to sell and be prepared for the seasonal price adjustments. In these peaks and these swings, we are at the top. It will start to swing down. We might get another bump for the next month, maybe 2. If you are going to be listing your home, do not try to get that absolute pie in the sky price unless you are willing to let it sit on the market for quite a while. Be aware of the shift, get ahead of the shift, price aggressively, or you can sit on the market for 3 months, do 2 or 3 price drops, and then still sell for the same price that you could have sold for right now or in a month. So for my sellers, those are a lot of the conversations I'm having, just preparing them and setting realistic expectations for what the patterns and historical data says will likely happen given the time of year, minus crazy rate drops. Nobody is expecting those right now. Let's go ahead and look at showings real quick. 5 to 6 per month on average. And showings to pending. So how many showings it's taking to get under contract, somewhere between the 8 and 12 mark, 9 and 12, 9 and 13. That's not unusual. I will say on my listings, recently it has been less than that, but y'all know I set my sellers up for success. So they sell quick and they look really nice. We don't have as many showings. They get off the market quicker and they sell faster because the faster they sell, the better the price it gets the seller versus sitting on the market longer just to do price drops and chase the market down. We get ahead of it. We make life simpler. We get the deal done. For buyers, you have a little bit of leverage. Let's go to percent of close to list price. And I think you're going to have more, especially with all those this inventory peaking out. Like I mentioned, more available inventory than we've had for 12 years. And sellers having to come to that realization that it's a balanced market. I'm curious in the fall, Q3, Q4, if we get to a buyer's market. I really think we will, because I think when you get above that 3 months of supply, when you start to get to 4 to 5, that's really a buyer's market. Even though people say it's 6, that's antiquated information in my mind. That's when the market moves slower. That's when people didn't have access to information quicker. And the process is much faster than it used to be, especially finding and getting something under contract. If you have any questions, or if you are wanting to game plan the best time of year, what's your goals, what makes sense for you, what kind of property prep do you need, I have a ton of content on my YouTube channel. If you would like to set up a consult, phone, Zoom, or in-person consult, I do have links for that down below as well. Let me know how I can help. If you need an agent in another area, or you're moving from Denver to another area, or you're moving to Denver from another place and you need a good agent recommendation, I have a link below down for that. Happy to match you with people that make sense for your situation, how you like to work, and what your goals are. If you're looking to buy, set up a consult down there too. I do lots of relocation videos and virtual showing videos for my buyers. So I always make sure my sellers have that kind of marketing, 3D tours, floor plans, virtual showings, all of that's available. I want to make it as easy as possible for people to see what they need to see and get the information they're looking for. So thanks so much for the time and have a great day.